This is exactly what we've been waiting for, folks. Ross Atkins just stepped up to the microphone, looked the media dead in the eye, and dropped absolute bombshells about the Toronto Blue Jays' plans for the rest of this offseason. And let me tell you right now, if you're a Blue Jays fan, you need to hear every single word of what I'm about to tell you, because this changes everything. The Blue Jays general manager finally spoke out, and what he revealed is going to send shockwaves through all of baseball. This isn't the same old corporate doublespeak. We're used to hearing from front office executives who dance around questions and give us nothing but platitudes and empty promises. No, this was different. This was Ross Atkins essentially standing up and declaring to the entire baseball world that the Toronto Blue Jays are not done spending. They are not done making moves, and they have the full backing of ownership to do whatever it takes to build a championship roster. Plus, we got to hear from Kazuma Okamoto for the first time since he signed his 4-year, $60 million deal with Toronto, and trust me when I say this guy is going to be an absolute fan favorite. The story of how he chose the Blue Jays is both hilarious and heartwarming, and we're going to get into all of that in just a minute. But first, let's talk about what Ross Atkins said today during Okamoto's introductory press conference. Because if you know anything about how Ross typically handles these situations, you'll understand why Blue Jays fans are absolutely losing their minds right now. This man operates differently than he has in years past, and that shift in tone and approach tells us everything we need to know about where this franchise is headed. Before we dive deep into the juicy details, let me set the stage for those of you who might not be familiar with Ross Atkins. Typical modus operandi during press conferences. In years past, whenever the Blue Jays made a significant addition to the roster, whether it was signing a big-name free agent or completing a major trade, Ross would inevitably be asked. More moves were coming, and his response was always the same carefully crafted corporate message that essentially translated to, "We're probably done." But I'm not going to say that explicitly because I don't want to look bad if circumstances change. He'd talk about how the team was in a good place, how they felt confident in their current roster construction, how they'd always be opportunistic if something came along but weren't actively pursuing anything major. It was the standard GM deflection, the kind of non-answer that technically doesn't close any doors while simultaneously making it clear that no more significant moves were coming. But today? Today was completely different, and that difference is what has Blue Jays Nation buzzing with excitement and anticipation. Ross Atkins was asked directly if the Blue Jays would continue to add players to the roster. This is a straightforward question that he's been asked dozens of times over his tenure as general manager. And we all know how he typically responds. But this time, something fundamental had changed. This time, Ross Atkins looked into those cameras and said something that should make every Blue Jays fan absolutely giddy with excitement. He said the Blue Jays will continue to look at ways to improve the team. Now, that alone isn't necessarily groundbreaking. Every GM says they're always looking to improve. But then he added something crucial, something that veteran Blue Jays observers immediately recognized as significant. He acknowledged that any additions at this point would obviously cut into playing time for some established big leaguers. But then he dropped this absolute gem of a quote. "We've always had incredible support from ownership." Let's pause right there and break down why that line is so monumentally important. When a general manager goes out of his way to mention ownership support in the context of making additional moves, he's sending a very clear message to everyone listening. We have money to spend, we have permission to spend it. And we're not afraid to use it if the right opportunity presents itself. This isn't. It's Ross Atkins tap dancing around a question and giving us corporate jargon. This is Ross Atkins essentially confirming that Rogers Communications has opened up the checkbook and told him to go build a championship team. There's no artificial budget constraint holding them back. There's no penny pinching or hand-wringing about luxury tax implications. The Blue Jays have the financial backing to make whatever moves they deem necessary. And Ross wanted everyone to know it. If you've been following the Blue Jays over the past several years, you know there have been off-seasons where it felt like the organization was operating with one hand tied behind their back financially. There were moves they could have made but didn't. There were free agents they could have pursued more aggressively but backed off from. There was always this sense that somewhere in the background, ownership was putting parameters around spending that prevented the front office from being as aggressive as they wanted to be. That's not the case anymore. And Ross Atkins made that abundantly clear today. The tone was different. The body language was different. The whole vibe was different from what we've seen in previous years. If you go back and watch press conferences from 2023 or 2024, after the Blue Jays made significant moves, you'll see Ross essentially dancing around, questions about future additions, and usually ending with some variation of our team is very good, and we'll probably stick with what we have. Barring an unforeseen circumstance, he did not say that today. In fact, he said the complete opposite. He said if there's an area to improve, they're going to do it. If there's an aspect of the team that they can see themselves improving and there's an available opportunity, they're willing to pursue it. That's not equivocation. That's not hedging. That's a general manager telling you straight up that more moves are coming. Blue Jays fans on social media immediately picked up on this shift in tone and started going absolutely crazy with excitement. The consensus was clear. The doors are not closed on another addition. And the Blue Jays have the full support of ownership to make it happen. Sure, playing time distribution and potential roster subtractions would be factors to consider. But those are manageable problems that can be solved. The important thing is that the Blue Jays are still actively looking to upgrade this roster even after already landing Dylan Cease, Shane Bieber, and Kazuma Okamoto. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Ross Atkins was then asked specifically if the Blue Jays were out on Bo Bichette. This is a direct question about one of the biggest free agents still available on the market. A player who spent his entire career with Toronto and who represents a significant potential addition to the roster. This is the kind of question where a general manager who doesn't want to pursue a player will usually give some diplomatic nonsense that makes it clear they've moved on without explicitly saying so, but Ross Atkins didn't do that. Not even close. Not only did Ross refuse to say they were out on Bo Bichette, but he circled back to his earlier point about being willing to improve the team if there's an area that needs improvement. He essentially said that if there's an ability to improve the team, they will do it, and that was his response when asked specifically about Bichette. Then, and this is crucial, he doubled down by mentioning again that they have the full support of ownership to make these moves happen. Let me tell you something, folks, Ross Atkins doesn't talk like that ever. This man is the king of diplomatic non-answers. The master of saying a lot of words without actually committing to anything specific. But today, when asked about Bo Bichette, he could have easily said, "We love Bo. He's a great player. We'll see what happens," and left it at that. Instead, he went out of his way to emphasize that the team can still improve, that ownership supports making those improvements. And he conspicuously refused to close the door on bringing Bo back. The Blue Jays media members who cover this team day in, day out immediately recognized how significant this was. One reporter tweeted that Ross Atkins rarely, if ever, talks like this, and that the entire organization is moving differently this winter. Another said this was the quote that confirmed it for them, noting that Ross doesn't typically provide this kind of clarity about the team's intentions. Multiple observers noted that Ross Atkins was holding back a smile at various points during the press conference when asked about potential moves, particularly when Bo Bichette's name came up. Body language matters, folks. And everything about Ross's demeanor today suggested someone who knows more moves are coming and is excited about what's in the pipeline. Here's what makes this even more encouraging. If you go back and review Ross Atkins' press conferences from previous years around this same time in the offseason, you'll find numerous instances where he threw cold water on speculation about additional moves. He'd use phrases like, "We feel really good about where we are," or barring something unexpected, "We're probably set with our current roster." Those kinds of statements are designed to manage expectations and signal to fans and media that the shopping is essentially done for the winter. He didn't do any of that today. In fact, he did the opposite. He left the door wide open for significant additions while making it clear that ownership has given him the green light to spend if the right opportunities present themselves. That's not subtle. That's not open to interpretation. That's as close as you're ever going to get to a general manager standing up and declaring, "We ain't done yet." One reporter summed it up perfectly. In previous years at this stage of the offseason, Ross would have been much colder and more dismissive when asked about additional moves. But this year, the vibe is completely different. The tone is different. The approach is different. Everything about how this front office is operating suggests they're not satisfied with just being good, they want to be great. And they're willing to spend whatever it takes to get there. Ross Atkins did acknowledge that adding more players at this point would mean taking away playing time from established major leaguers. And he's absolutely right about that. The Blue Jays have a roster logjam, particularly in the outfield, and adding someone like Kyle Tucker or bringing back Bo Bichette would squeeze somebody out of regular playing time. But that's exactly what Ben Nicholson-Smith has been reporting for the past week or so in his articles covering the team. The solution is obvious. If the Blue Jays are going to make another big addition, they're going to have to trade someone off the current roster. Most likely, that means Nathan Luxus or another outfielder is on the way out. At this point, a trade feels inevitable if they want to add Tucker or Bichette. But the fact that Ross Atkins didn't use playing time concerns as a reason to shut down, speculation about more moves tells you everything you need to know. He's aware of the logjam. He knows trades will be necessary, and he's clearly comfortable making those moves if it means upgrading the roster. Ross Atkins could have very easily said, "Today we have so many good players already that it's hard to see how we could add anyone else without hurting team chemistry or creating an untenable playing time situation." He could have used the roster crunch as his excuse to tell everyone the Blue Jays are done making moves, but he didn't do that. Instead, he acknowledged the playing time issue while making it clear that if there's a way to improve the team, they're going to find a way to make it work out. We need to talk about what happened after Ross Atkins finished dropping all these bombs, because things got even more interesting. Scott Boras, the super agent who represents some of the biggest names in baseball, was asked by reporter Gregor Chisholm why the position player market has been developing so slowly this offseason. Boras's response: he joked that it's Ross's fault, which immediately sent Blue Jays fans and media into an absolute frenzy. Let's decode what Boras was really saying here, because super agents don't make offhand comments without strategic purpose. When Boras says the slow market is Ross Atkins' fault, he's not actually criticizing the Blue Jays GM. He's doing something much more calculated. He's publicly putting pressure on Ross to make a move that would cause a domino effect throughout the rest of the free agent market. Think about how this works. Right now, you have several high-profile position players still unsigned, including Kyle Tucker and Bo Bichette. Other teams are waiting to see where those guys land before making their own moves, creating a logjam where everybody is frozen in place waiting for somebody else to make the first move. Boras is essentially telling Ross Atkins, hey, if you sign Tucker or Bo, that's going to unlock the rest of the market and everybody else can start finalizing their plans. One observer tweeted that Boras was publicly telling Atkins to hurry up and sign one of Tucker or Bichette so that the rest of the position player market can fall into place. Now here's the thing, neither Tucker nor Bichette are actually Scott Boras' clients, so why would he care? Well, Boras represents other players whose markets are also frozen right now, and he knows that once the Tucker and Bichette situations resolve, teams will pivot to his clients and start making offers. It's a fascinating bit of public gamesmanship, the kind of thing that Boras is famous for. He's always playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, always working multiple angles simultaneously to benefit his clients. But the fact that he's specifically calling out Ross Atkins and the Blue Jays tells you something important. He believes Toronto is genuinely in the mix for these players and that a move could be imminent. Whether you want to dismiss all of this as typical GM and agent posturing, whether you want to say that Ross didn't actually commit to anything specific and was just doing typical PR management, I'm telling you right now, if you watched that press conference, you saw something different. There was a vibe, an energy, a sense that something big is brewing behind the scenes. Ross Atkins was holding back smiles at multiple points when asked about additional moves. When Kyle Tucker's name came up, you could see it on his face. When Bo Bichette was mentioned, the reaction was unmistakable. This isn't a general manager going through the motions at a press conference. This is someone who knows more moves are coming and is barely containing his excitement about what's in the works. The entire organization is operating differently this winter, and it shows in every interaction with the media. Let's also talk about what we're learning from other reporters covering the situation. The Mets, who had been mentioned as potential competition for Kyle Tucker, seemingly aren't super aggressive in pursuing him, according to recent reports. That's huge for the Blue Jays because it potentially removes a deep-pocketed competitor from the bidding. When you have Steve Cohen and the Mets' money out of the equation, suddenly the landscape looks a lot different. Meanwhile, Robert Murray reported yesterday that the Blue Jays are in on both Tucker and Bichette. and that Tucker is genuinely interested in joining Toronto. That's not some vague "they've had discussions" report, that's a legitimate insider, saying there's mutual interest on both sides and real conversations happening. Bob Nightingale and other reporters have echoed similar sentiments, all pointing toward the Blue Jays as serious players for at least one of these impact bats. Now you have Ross Atkins himself coming out and saying they have ownership support to make more moves. You've got Scott Boras publicly needling Ross to make something happen. You've got multiple reports about Toronto's interest in Tucker and Bichette. All the smoke is pointing in one direction. Another big move is coming, and it's coming soon. The fact that the Blue Jays now have Kazuma Okamoto in the fold actually makes this easier in some ways. They've addressed the third base situation, added some right-handed pop to the lineup, and created roster flexibility that allows them to pursue an outfielder or middle infielder without creating impossible logjams. Sure, there are still playing time questions to sort out, but those are good problems to have. Those are championship team problems. Speaking of Okamoto, his introductory press conference was an absolute delight and gave us a glimpse into why this guy is going to be beloved by Blue Jays fans. He was asked multiple times what position he's going to be playing, and the Blue Jays have been deliberately vague in their answers. Okamoto said he wants to discuss it with the manager, and Ross Atkins gave a similarly non-committal response about working it out with the coaching staff and the player. Why are they leaving the door open on Okamoto's position? Because they're still in negotiations for either an outfielder in Kyle Tucker or a middle infielder in Bo Bichette. If they sign Tucker, maybe Okamoto plays more third base with Addison Barger shifting to a different role. If they bring back Bichette, maybe Okamoto sees more time in the outfield to create room in the infield. The point is, they're maintaining flexibility because they know more moves are coming and they don't want to lock themselves into anything that limits their options. But here's the absolute best part of Okamoto's press conference. The story that's going to make you fall in love with this guy if you haven't already. When asked about his decision to join Toronto, Okamoto revealed that he put all 30 Major League Baseball team logos in front of his young daughter and asked her which one she liked the most. And she chose the Blue Jays. That's right, folks, Kazuma Okamoto's daughter is the real MVP of this entire transaction. She's the reason we have this talented Japanese third baseman joining the organization. Imagine being that little girl someday, when you're older and realizing that you're the reason your dad ended up playing for one of the most storied franchises in baseball. What an incredible story! And what a testament to Okamoto's character that he involved his family in such a major life decision. Jokes aside, Okamoto came across as a genuinely great person during his press conference. He started the whole thing by introducing himself in English, which clearly took some courage and showed his commitment to connecting with fans and media in Toronto. Here's what he said. And I want you to picture this guy standing at a podium, speaking in what's clearly not his native language, making the effort to connect. Hello everyone. My name is Kazuma Okamoto. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am very happy to join the Blue Jays. I will work hard every day and do my best for the team. Thank you for the support. Nice to meet you. Go Blue Jays! How can you not love that? This guy just signed a $60 million contract. He's moving his entire family to a new country. He's adjusting to a completely different baseball culture, and he's making the effort to speak English at his first press conference. That's the kind of character and professionalism that championship teams are built on. That's the kind of player who's going to endear himself to fans through both his performance on the field and his conduct off. Blue Jays fans should be absolutely thrilled to have Kazuma Okamoto in the organization. He's going to be a productive player who fills a need on the roster. He's also going to be someone that the fan base rallies around and supports throughout his tenure in Toronto. Those kinds of players are invaluable. The guys who become more than just statistics in a box score, but actual personalities that fans connect with on a deeper level. And shout out to Okamoto's daughter as well. That little girl made a choice that's going to impact her family's life for at least the next 4 years. And she nailed it. The Blue Jays are a great organization with an impassionate fan base in an incredible city. She pointed at that Blue Jays logo and said, "That one, Daddy." And now here we are. So where does all of this leave us as we look ahead to the rest of the offseason? The Blue Jays have made it abundantly clear through Ross Atkins' comments that they're not done making moves. They have ownership support to continue spending. They're actively pursuing ways to improve the roster. And based on everything we're hearing from insiders and reporters, that improvement is most likely going to come in the form of either Kyle Tucker or Bo Bichette. The Alex Bregman possibility seems to have faded, which makes sense given the roster construction and the addition of Okum. It's really coming down to Tucker versus Bichette at this point, and honestly, either one would be a massive addition that pushes this team even closer to championship contention. Kyle Tucker gives you an elite outfielder, a proven superstar who can hit for average and power while playing solid defense. He slots into the lineup perfectly, provides protection for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and gives manager John Schneider another weapon to deploy in big situations. Landing Tucker would be a statement move, the kind of acquisition that sends a message to the rest of the American League that the Blue Jays are 0-on winning right now, Bo. Bichette brings you back a homegrown star, a player who's beloved by fans and who's been one of the most productive middle infielders in baseball when healthy. He fills a positional need, adds another dynamic bat to an already potent lineup, and provides the kind of veteran leadership that championship teams need. Bringing back Bo would energize the fan base and demonstrate that the Blue Jays are committed to their core players. Both scenarios have merit. Both scenarios make the Blue Jays better, and based on everything Ross Atkins said today, one of those scenarios is very likely to play out over the coming weeks. Maybe it drags into February, hopefully it doesn't go all the way into March, but the Blue Jays are going to make another move. The more reports that drop, the more confident I become in that prediction. This is an exciting time to be a Blue Jays fan, folks. After years of feeling like the organization was perpetually one piece short, after seasons that ended in disappointment despite having talented rosters, we're finally seeing a front office that's committed to going all-in during their championship window. Ross Atkins and ownership aren't satisfied with being pretty good. They're not content with making the playoffs and hoping for the best. They want to win a World Series, and they're backing up that ambition with action. The Dylan Cease signing was huge. Bringing back Shane Bieber was important. Adding Tyler Rogers and Cody Ponce bolstered the bullpen. Signing Kazuma Okamoto addressed third base and added right-handed power. But none of those moves suggest a team that's done adding. Instead, they suggest an organization that's methodically building towards something special, checking off boxes and addressing needs one by one until they've constructed a roster that can compete with anyone in baseball. And now, with Ross Atkins essentially confirming that more moves are coming and that ownership fully supports those efforts, we can sit back and wait for the next bomb to drop. Will it be Kyle Tucker signing a long-term deal with Toronto? Will it be Bo Bichette returning to the organization on a new contract? Will it be some other move that nobody saw coming? Whatever it is, it's coming soon. The tone of today's press conference made that abundantly clear. Ross Atkins isn't done, and neither are the Toronto Blue Jays. So Blue Jays fans, here's the question I want you to weigh in on. Who would you rather see the team add at this point? Would you prefer Kyle Tucker, giving you that elite outfielder who can be a cornerstone piece for years to come? Or would you rather see Bo Bichette return, bringing back a fan favorite who's been one of the faces of this franchise? Both options have their merits. And I genuinely don't think there's a wrong answer here. Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I want to hear from all of you. Tell me which move you're hoping to see. Tell me if you think the Blue Jays should pursue both guys somehow. Tell me if there's a different player entirely that you think they should target. Let's get a conversation going because this is the fun part of the offseason, speculating about moves and imagining what this roster could look like when spring training finally arrives. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Ross Atkins' press conference and everything it means for the Blue Jays offseason plans, smash that like button and help us reach more Blue Jays fans who need to hear this news. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already because we're going to be covering every single development as this story unfolds. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any updates when the next big move goes down. Share this video with your fellow Blue Jays fans who need to know that the organization isn't done making moves. Comment below with your predictions for who the next addition will be. And make sure you're following along because based on everything we heard today, we're going to have more news to report very soon. The Blue Jays are moving differently this winter, folks. Ross Atkins made that crystal clear today. The master plan is in motion. Ownership is fully supportive, and more impact moves are coming. Whether it's Tucker, whether it's Bichette, whether it's someone else entirely. Okay, this roster is about to get even better. What a time to be alive if you're a Toronto Blue Jays fan. The future is bright, the present is exciting, and championships are the expectation rather than the hope. Let's enjoy this ride together. Thanks for watching, and remember, you guys are absolute beasts with your support.